Welcome back everyone, it's time to go deep. And today, we are breaking down Ichigo's Quincy Powers. Yes, Ichigo is not only a Shinigami, hollow, full-bringer, but also a Quincy. With this knowledge, Ichigo literally becomes the most busted character in Bleach. Now having not one, but two swords. Ichigo's Quincy Powers are insane. We are talking about a boost in every stats Ichigo has. For instance, Ichigo now has a much greater defensive capability with access to Bleach Anime, where his overall durability increases exponentially. As we have seen from other Quincy's, it can even stop the most powerful of attacks, like a captain's Bankai, if the user willingly keeps his defense at full power. The way Ichigo's Quincy power works is mainly as a major power amplifier. When he gains both of his new Zanpakutōs, they combine together to multiply his power to an insane degree. Not only does his raw power increases, but also his speed. Quincy's are known for being ridiculously quick. For example, Ishida in Soul Society uses this technique to greatly increase his speed, giving him the capability to match a captain. And after Ichigo fully came to grasp his new powers, he seemed to skip behind multiple stern ritters in a way resembling that of a Hirenkyaku, which makes a lot of sense. Blood is another ability that the Quincy can use, and by extension, Ichigo can. By making his reishi flow directly through one's vein, the Quincy can drastically increase the power to inhumane levels. Ichigo already has the power of a Shinigami and a hollow, so imagine this on top of that. Like bruh, Ichigo is completely busted. Now I know what you guys are thinking. Ichigo is broken because Kubo out of nowhere gave him max stats.
He's out of line, but he's right.
Well, yes, but no.
Hold up, wait a minute.
Ichigo's Quincy powers were actually foreshadowed from the very start of the story. Don't believe it? That's why we're here. Leaving aside the mystery of Ichigo's dead mother's origin, Ichigo having two entities in the spirit realm, and of course, this bedsheet. Let's start with an instant that was a major hit, which is Ichigo's clash against Aizen at the fake Karakura town. In chapter 397, Aizen is seen revealing some insane secrets, like the fact he had planned out all the battles Ichigo faced from the beginning. Let alone that Aizen had known Ichigo right from the moment he was born and was indirectly involved with his birth.
What?
Yes, those of you who have notification bell on will know what I'm talking about. To make Ichigo realize his true origins, Aizen begins telling him that he was born special as a hybrid between a human and some other mysterious entity. Now at this moment, Ishin, Ichigo's dad, appears in front of him, giving everyone the impression that Aizen meant Ichigo was born as a human and Shinigami. I mean, who wouldn't, right? It just made sense at that point of time. Well, here's the thing. When Ichigo was born, Ishin was no different than a normal human in his Gigai Urahara made for him. He had lost all of his powers as a Shinigami, so Aizen was most definitely referring to Ichigo's maternal origins, which is nothing other than a Quincy. To further solidify Kubo's early intentions of Ichigo's Quincy powers, the first scans that was released of this panel actually had Aizen state Shinigami and ... before he gets cut off, showcasing Kubo wasn't referring to the mystery of Ichigo's father's origin. However, Ichigo showed signs of his special heritage even before this. In fact, the first chapter meeting between Ichigo and Rukia ended up with him consuming all of her Shinigami powers when she had only intended to give away half. And if you remember, absorption of spiritual energy is how Quincy power works. So Ichigo's Quincy side is a possible reason why he was able to absorb all of Rukia's Ryotsu at an alarming rate. If that's not enough, perhaps the way Ichigo's power was restored in the Fullbringer arc by Rukia and the others might be a hint as well. When Ginjo stole Ichigo's powers, he lost all hopes of ever fighting again. This is when Rukia appeared and stabbed Ichigo with a special soul forged sword very close to Ichigo's heart, causing the re-emergence of his abilities. This was eerily similar to Uryu's process process of regaining his Quincy powers after he lost it and later had his father, Ryuken, also strike him near his heart, reawakening his abilities. But leaving aside all the small hints Kubo threw at us, the major clue was given by Ichigo's own Zanpakuto, Zangetsu. For as long as we can remember, Ichigo had been fighting the two spirits, Hollow White Ichigo and Old Man Zangetsu in his inner world. But all this time, we didn't know why these two existed, and at times would give us contradictory statements on the identity of the real Zangetsu, until we came to know about Ichigo's true origins. Well, in chapter 541, we learn the biggest secret in the entire series of Bleach, where all along, Old Man Zangetsu is actually the source of Ichigo's Quincy powers. We witnessed the final confrontation in Ichigo's inner world when the forger of Zanpakuto's, Nemaya, informs Ichigo in chapter 540 why his Asauchi turned white, just like his hollow self. It was because White Ichigo was actually his true Zanpakuto all along. Yes! What's crazy is that Hollow Ichigo had always been saying this from the very beginning, claiming that he himself is Zangetsu, not that creepy old geezer. I don't know who that prick is. Nemaya also went further to make Ichigo realize how the old man Ichigo has been seeing was deceiving him all this time, pretending to be his Zanpakuto, where in reality he is an imposter. So now this then brings us to the question, who exactly is he?
Who are you?
Well, he is none other than the one and only son of God, the Soul King. Yep, Old Man Zangetsu is Yhwach himself, being the very father of all Quincy's. Well, at least a piece of him. So, how did this even happen? Like, if a random old sussy man snuck into my inner mind, it would raise some questions. Well, you see, the reason he is hanging around in Ichigo's inner world boils down to the fact that all Quincy's have a piece of Yhwach's soul in them, since he is their father. And you know, the originator of their power. This makes Old Man Zangetsu its manifestation, hence having Yhwach's appearance from 1000 years ago, and his Bankai version looking like his teenage self. In fact, Ichigo sensed this very thing when he came face to face with the original Yhwach in Soul Society for the first time. Ichigo was subconsciously drawn to Yhwach, realizing that he was eerily reminded of Old Man Zangetsu. This Quincy side of Ichigo was a force to be reckoned with, because he could even access Ichigo's inherent Shinigami powers. And unlike other Quincy's, who also have a bit of Yhwach's soul in them, Ichigo is a special case because he can communicate with his Yhwach. That sounds kind of weird, right? This is because he has access to his soul realm due to being a Shinigami and having a Zanpakuto. In turn, he is able to see his Quincy powers and Yhwach's manifestation, just like a Zanpakuto's spirit. A good example of a contrast would be Ichigo's mother, who also was a pure Quincy, but she was not able to communicate with her Yhwach, being her Quincy powers. This presence of parts of Yhwach's soul extends to another ability called Oswalin. Through this, Yhwach, the original one, can take away the powers Quincy's have for himself or even redistribute it, since it's his own power fundamentally that was spread throughout his generation and bloodline. In fact, Yhwach used this very ability to revive after 900 years. Yep, he would kill his own offspring without any hesitation. You know, can't really blame the guy, yes. Nah, that's kind of mad. This Oswalin ability is actually very important to the story and Ichigo's journey, because Ichigo's mother, Masaki Kurosaki, was led to her death against Grand Fisher, all because this technique was used on her. To be fair, this technique was pretty much used on everybody. Uryu even survived against it, and Yhwach later even takes away Ichigo's Quincy powers in chapter 680. However, knowing this, we have to realize that Ichigo, being an exception, was able to influence his Quincy manifestation away from its original purpose. This is what makes him the protagonist after all. In chapter 541, we learn from Old Man Zangetsu that from the beginning, It seemed like he was helping Ichigo, but every time he was in trouble, it wasn't him, rather it was Hollow White, the real Zangetsu who had countlessly saved Ichigo from the verge of death. This old man in reality was forcibly acting as the center of power by suppressing Ichigo's Shinigami side. Even whilst Ichigo was getting stronger, he was only using a small fraction of his true power that Hollow White Ichigo Zangetsu was allowing him to borrow. Even then, old man Zangetsu says that he's neither an enemy nor an ally. Ichigo's powers were suppressed because old man Zangetsu never wanted Ichigo to become a Shinigami due to all the blood history between them and Quincy's. Eventually, Yhwach's prophecy and return would come true, and if Ichigo became a fully fledged Shinigami, he would stand against Yhwach and die. In a weird way, old man Zangetsu was still looking out for Ichigo by trying to keep him away from danger. However, as much as this old man's own purpose stood tall, Ichigo's will and determination moved his heart. Somewhere along the lines, old man Zangetsu mellowed out and began imparting wisdom that would help Ichigo rather than lead him astray. He had been moved by the struggles Ichigo had gone through and overcome, going beyond himself every time. In the end, he hadn't lied to Ichigo about anything except his name. Well, as Ichigo realized in chapter 541, old man Zangetsu respected Ichigo's undying will in choosing to live his life as a Shinigami. After his confession, old man Zangetsu tells Ichigo, "You have grown strong, my boy. I was blessed to watch you grow right beside you. There is no greater joy. I am content." As he states this, with a single tear running through his eyes, old man Zangetsu, Ichigo's Quincy manifestation, Yhwach's essence, finally disappears from Ichigo's spirit realm, turning into a great big bright sword. Yeah, he becomes a sword. Who would have expected that? Before he does part ways, old man Zangetsu tells Ichigo that until now he had been using only a mere fragment of his power, which he couldn't contain. But now, with old man Zangetsu out of the way, Ichigo can now finally use his full power. This final confrontation ended with Ichigo realizing and accepting both half of his soul. He concluded that both spirits which had been with him all this time were Zangetsu, and he would neither ask them for help nor push them out of the way anymore, because he was them and they were him, becoming one in essence. Even as old man Zangetsu had tried to impede Ichigo, he had lent Ichigo the power of a Quincy to become stronger. He hadn't lied to Ichigo, and that made him as much Zangetsu as the real one. They both had wanted to protect Ichigo in their own ways, be it by taking over him or keeping him out of combat. This is even reflected in the final events of the Arrancar saga, when Ichigo asks Tensa Zangetsu to teach him the final Getsuga Tensho. Tensa Zangetsu brings out Hollow Ichigo himself in the state Ichigo had been when he defeated Urukiora, and just to make sure that Ichigo wouldn't learn the final Getsuga Tensho, they both merged to become one and fight Ichigo. In seeing Ichigo confused, they told him that the two of them were one, and both Ichigo's powers. There were no lies in those words, as Ichigo himself realized later. So even though they were two fundamentally distinct spirits, both Zangetsu still was manifestation of Ichigo's powers. They were different with different motives, but were still held together by Ichigo's unique Shinigami powers, Zangetsu, which was a holified Quincy Zanpakuto spirit. This realization that the blade was Ichigo himself put him at ease and helped Ichigo forge not only one, but two Zanpakuto, each representing the two sides of his soul. Thus, Ichigo got his true Shikai and Bankai, which was basically his 1,928 million, I don't know, God knows how many awakening throughout this story. But if you guys want to know every single one of them and want more Bleach content, then make sure to watch this playlist right now.